Have you ever noticed how someone can earn a decent salary, live in a nice apartment, drive a reliable car, go out on weekends, and still quietly feel like they're not getting ahead? Not struggling, not in crisis, just not moving forward in any meaningful way. And the uncomfortable part is this: it's not because they're broke, it's because they're spending like they're already rich. Let's take a realistic example. Imagine someone in 2026 living in a major US or Western European city, maybe Chicago, London, or Amsterdam. They're earning around $85,000 a year, which, after taxes, leaves them with roughly $5,200 per month. On paper, this is a solid income. It's above average. It should feel like progress. Now look at how that money flows. Rent or mortgage takes about $2,200. A car payment, insurance, and fuel add another $700. Groceries, utilities, and basic living costs come to around $1,200. Student loans or other debt payments take $300. And then there's everything else: subscriptions, dining out, short trips, shopping, easily $700 to $900. Nothing here is extreme. Nothing looks irresponsible. In fact, it looks normal. But add it together and you're at roughly $5,100 a month, which means at best there's maybe $100 left. Some months, nothing at all. And this is where the confusion begins, because this person isn't careless with money. They're not making reckless decisions. They're doing what most people around them are doing. So why does it still feel like financial progress is so slow? The answer isn't just about how much they earn. It's about how they're spending relative to what they actually have, because there's a subtle but important difference between being able to afford something and being able to sustain it without limiting your future. In 2026, the definition of a normal lifestyle has quietly shifted. What used to be considered comfortable is now considered basic. Living alone instead of sharing space, driving a newer car instead of an older one, ordering food instead of cooking regularly, taking short trips instead of staying local. Individually, none of these are extreme, but together they form a lifestyle that assumes a higher level of financial freedom than most people actually have. And that's where the mismatch begins. Because when your spending reflects a higher version of your income, your financial reality becomes stretched. Let's look at this more clearly with simple math. If you're earning $5,200 a month and spending $5,000, you might feel stable, but you're only saving $200. That's $2,400 a year. At that pace, building even a modest $30,000 financial buffer would take over 12 years. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. No job disruptions, no major health expenses, no unexpected life changes. So it's not that saving is impossible, it's that your current lifestyle leaves very little room for meaningful progress. And this is where the illusion of being fine becomes dangerous, because everything looks okay on the surface. Bills are paid, life feels comfortable, there's no immediate pressure. But underneath, there's very little margin, and margin is what creates freedom. Without it, every decision becomes tied to your current income. You can't easily take a break from work. You can't easily switch careers. You can't handle unexpected costs without stress. So even though you're not broke, you're not flexible either. And that's the part most people don't talk about. Because modern spending isn't driven by necessity alone. It's driven by perception. People don't compare themselves to extreme wealth. They compare themselves to their immediate environment, their coworkers, their friends, their social circle. If everyone around you is living a certain way, that lifestyle starts to feel reasonable, expected even. And slowly your definition of normal adjusts upward, not in one big decision, but through a series of small logical upgrades: a slightly better apartment, a slightly newer car, a few more conveniences.
Each step feels justified. But over time, those decisions stack into a lifestyle that requires most of your income just to maintain. And once you reach that point, something subtle happens. Your financial life becomes fixed. Your income supports your lifestyle, but your lifestyle depends on your income. And that dependence is what makes stepping back feel difficult. Not because it's impossible, but because it feels like losing progress. So instead of questioning the structure, most people try to solve the problem by earning more. And sometimes that works temporarily. A raise gives you breathing room. But if your lifestyle expands alongside your income, which it often does, the underlying issue doesn't change. You're still operating with a thin margin, just at a higher level. This is why someone can go from earning $60,000 to $90,000 and still feel financially stuck, because the structure stayed the same, only the numbers got bigger. Now, let's extend this over time. If your expenses consistently rise to match your income, your savings rate remains small, which means your ability to build wealth remains limited. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your system doesn't allow for accumulation. And over years, this creates a quiet pattern. Income increases, lifestyle improves, but your financial position doesn't strengthen in proportion. And eventually, you reach a point where you're stable but not progressing, comfortable but constrained. And this is where the realization starts to form. You're not broke, you're just living at a level that assumes more financial freedom than you actually have. So what changes this? Not extreme restriction, not cutting everything out of your life. The shift is more about awareness than action. Financially intelligent people don't necessarily avoid spending. They just understand what spending commits them to. They recognize that every fixed monthly cost reduces future flexibility. So instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they ask something slightly different. What does this require me to maintain over time? Because a higher rent isn't just a number, it's a long-term obligation. A financed car isn't just a payment, it's a reduction in options. And options, more than income, are what create real financial freedom. So rather than allowing their lifestyle to expand as quickly as their income, they create a gap. Income increases, but expenses rise more slowly. That gap doesn't look dramatic at first. It might just be a few $100s, but over time it becomes meaningful. Because now, instead of saving what's left over, you're intentionally keeping a portion of your income uncommitted. And that changes the trajectory. Gradually, quietly, you begin to build a buffer, then flexibility, then optionality. And those things compound in a way that income alone cannot. Because financial freedom isn't about reaching a specific number overnight, it's about increasing how much control you have over your time and decisions. And that control comes from what you don't spend just as much as what you earn. So the goal isn't to stop living well, it's to recognize the difference between living well and living at the edge of your means. Because one gives you comfort and the other slowly removes your options. And once you see that distinction clearly, your decisions start to change naturally, not out of pressure, but out of understanding. If this gave you a clearer way to think about your money, consider subscribing to the channel.